and welcome to Neighbors and Friends. This is the third time I have had a TV series. When I lived up near Dubuque in the 70s, I had a series, and most of my guests were people like professors and engineers who helped me talk about the need for using forms of energy that were renewable, like solar power, wind power, more hydroelectric power perhaps. And now companies are building those things, so I don't have to talk about that anymore. Another topic we talked about was the United Nations. Heaven knows there's too much going on in the world, and we still need to talk about the fact there's only one planet to live on. While I was doing my series on United Nations work and covering high school model United Nations down at UNI, where Dr. George Pogue had a program going at that time, I took the camera one time to Des Moines in October when the governor invited high school students to come and sit in the chambers at the legislature and discuss and learn about the forming of the United Nations and how it could go on. When I interviewed Governor Ray privately for a segment of the show, I asked him how he got interested in these global affairs. And he said as a boy in Sunday school, his mother had brought a little globe to class, and he said it was just a little globe, no bigger than a big grapefruit. And his mother was showing the children where their missionary money went. But the thing that Bob Ray always remembered was the fact that there's only one earth for all of us to live on. So he was very active in United Nations work. Then later in the 80s, when I moved to Iowa City, I had a program at the studio that was at the public library then. And again, my guests were peace marchers, people talking about the need to have more use of other forms of energy that were not burnt up and used up, but renewable. The sun and the wind that God gives us every day, day after day. Then, now, today, what's one of the issues most upper mind in some people's minds? A new topic for a new series, gender orientation. Some people ask for laws, and some people shout, we can't give gays special rights. My guess is that gays only want ordinary citizenship rights. The right not to be harassed, the right not to be fired from a job, the right not to lose their housing because of their sexual orientation, the right, if you wish, to be married like any other loving couple might. It is, after all, a legal certificate that we go to the courthouse, and that's a legal certificate, a regular civil union, if you wish. And then you go to your church or your synagogue and have your wedding or your ceremony. So today's topic, the topic of the year, gender orientation, and do we know any people of the same gender attraction orientation? Now, it might surprise us how many we do know. And when preparing for this series, I asked a number of friends at the dining room down here at the Senior Citizen, Iowa City, Johnson County Senior Citizen Building. I asked a number of friends as I would come and go to church. I asked a number of friends, people I would just meet on the sidewalk when out getting my sunshine, and my doctor demanded more exercise, Elsie. And I would ask people, did you know that the lady who wrote America the Beautiful, the second almost official national anthem, Did you know that lady was a lesbian? I found one person who knew out of all the people I asked. There are dozens and dozens, even hundreds of men and women we have grown to love without knowing they are lesbians or gay. Thus, we have been left ignorant of the complete, whole person. One is the author of the unofficial national anthem, America the Beautiful. You know what? I used to assume that Catherine Lee Bates was Catherine Lee, married to a Mr. Bates. Not so. Lee was her mother's maiden name. It was her mother, Cornelia Frances Lee, who married the Reverend Mr. William Bates, a pastor at a Congregational church there. My young friend Jamie Anderson wrote a song, Never Assume. We'll play it someday. But back to Miss Bates. By the miracle of research and writing a little script, Miss Bates is with us today. Welcome, Miss Bates, and thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm an educator, you know. When your producer explained to me your plans for the program, I felt honored to be your first guest. And please, call me Catherine B. That's how I was called by faculty and staff.
Or why don't they just say Catherine?
While I was professor of English literature, Catherine Coleman was professor of history and economics. So people used our last initials to designate which one of us they were talking about.
Well, that's good. Please share with the viewers how you yourself referred to Catherine Coleman. I've read biographical material about you and some of your books and your poems. And when I read your book, Sigurd, our Golden Collie, I thought it really captured the tenderness and love during those 25 years the two of you shared.
I called her Joy of Life. That's how I always thought of her. That's what she always was to me. My work was important and rewarding, but Catherine Coleman was the joy of my life.
We know the faculty, staff, and students on campus at Wellesley were comfortable with you as a couple. But how did the townspeople treat you?
Oh, we were part of the community. Parents would send their children to us with pets and wild birds with wounds or broken wings or legs, or too young to catch their own food. We would bandage them and keep and feed the wild birds until they could fly.
I understand you two Catherines were together in your home until death did you part.
Yes, she had cancer, very advanced when they found it. 2 surgeries couldn't stop it. So I had an elevator installed in our home so she could live as normally as possible. Her writing studio was on the 3rd floor, a lovely sunny room with a good view. She was a prolific writer, both history and economic books and poetry. Then, in 3 years, she was gone. I didn't know if I could go on without her.
But you did go on for 14 more years.
Yes, life goes on. Thank God for students who are ever eager to learn.
And thank God for dedicated professors willing to share their knowledge and to challenge young minds to think and persevere. Please tell our viewers now how you came to write America the Beautiful.
Like many professors, I took a summer position at another campus. When I was 44, I went to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Pikes Peak is just outside of town, over 14,000 feet high, majestic, snow-covered much of the year. But this was summer, and a group of us climbed it before I headed back east. The view was awe-inspiring. If anyone hadn't fallen in love with all of creation before, that view should do it. I quickly jotted down the verses. This shouldn't surprise your viewers. I'd written many other poems, and I was a professor of literature.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for sharing that with us. And I know we would like to hear more about that trip up Pikes Peak.
Oh, you are welcome, but do excuse me now. Joy of Life is calling me. We don't like to be apart for very long.
Oh, thank you. And say hello to Joy of Life for us.
I will, thank you.
Catherine Lee Bates went to a smaller high school. Then she went to Wellesley, that was just beginning, and she was in the second graduating class, I believe, at Wellesley College. Then immediately they kept her on as faculty. It was a young college. They were building their faculty. She started there and she ended there until she retired about 4 years before she died. She retired to devote her full time to writing poetry. Some of us are wondering, who is Catherine Coleman? Catherine Coleman grew up in Ohio. Her dad said, "I'm going to show people how girls ought to be educated." So he sent her to the university in Wisconsin, where her brothers were at the university. She studied history and went out to Wellesley to become a faculty member. And at first she taught history, but then the university or college realized they needed someone teaching economics, and they made her chair of the economics department. She wrote a lot of books about economics and about the western United States. Some of us might like to go and see what she says about how the West was won and what it had to do with the economics as well as the residential wave of the pioneers out there. And Catherine Lee Bates and Catherine Coleman then were together. They were professors on the same faculty, and they were lifelong spouses, if you will. They shared a home together. They shared their life together. And as we heard in the interview, when Catherine Coleman died in 1915, after 3 years of cancer, Catherine Lee Bates really told her friends, "I don't think I can go on." They were a devoted couple, as devoted as any couple you want to meet anywhere. So now that we've had a chance to speak with Catherine Lee Bates or hear from her, how many out there were surprised to learn that Catherine Lee Bates was a lesbian in a long-term relationship? Most of you, I would guess, since that was my experience in preparing the program. So what about the gays and lesbians in our lives? What do we know about them? And who might they be? Well, let's take a look here. We might have a whole bunch of people here. Let's take Jim. Jim's a gay man. Knew he was from the time he could walk. And of course, Jim's got a mom and a dad like everybody else. And his mom had a mom and a dad. And his dad had a mom and a dad. Now, Jim's parents had 4 more kids. They had 2 girls and 2 boys. And there's, let's see now, how many else? The mom and dad had brothers and sisters too, you know. And there were 3 aunts and 4 uncles. My goodness, that's quite a lot of people already. Well, he said he had siblings. He's got cousins because those aunts and uncles had kids. So there were, let's say there were 5 girl cousins, and let's say that there were 10 boy cousins. Now, I don't know why they had so many boys. Some people have more boys than girls, but that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's cousins. Now, the cousins all had kids, as Jim's siblings had kids. Jim has 10 nieces and nephews. So guess what? There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nieces, and there were 5 nephews. That's quite a pile of family. Of course, the aunts and uncles all had kids. Most of them did. Not all of them. Some of them had kids. So he's got some second cousins, and that is a big group, let me tell you. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 girl second cousins, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 boy second cousins. That's quite a pile. That's 60 people there. That's quite a pile of people. If some stranger on the street, having heard too much anti-gay rhetoric from television or whatever source, if some stranger on the street goes out and kills Jim, that's a lot of people left with grief and heartache. On the other hand, if nobody kills Jim, if we get laws to protect Jim, that's a lot of people that are going to be happy for Jim. This is, with Jim, this is 60 people. Without Jim, it's 59. That's a lot of people. That doesn't even count the wives and husbands of his siblings, the wives and husbands of his aunts and uncles. That's just blood relatives. So we have Jim over here all by himself and his 59 blood relatives. Now that's blood relatives. Doesn't include the spouses of his aunts and uncles. Doesn't include the spouses of his siblings or his cousins. Maybe some of the nieces and nephews have spouses. It doesn't count them. But let's just look at these 60 people in a way that's a little more like a family tree instead of just a pile. So in the center we have Jim. Right there. There's Jim. Surrounded by his family. You have his parents and his grandparents. You have his siblings, his cousins. Oh, I forgot the aunts and uncles up there, but you have his siblings, his brothers and sisters, and all his girl cousins and all his boy cousins, his many nieces and nephews, his many, many second cousins. So we ask ourselves, who suffers more when stories are left half told? What is the part left out? When history books, the media, and public forum leave out part of the truth about a person's life, who suffers more? The people most like that person or the people least like that person? Example, if a history, science, or agricultural book doesn't include a picture or mention that George Washington Carver was an African American, then black youth are denied a hero, and some European Americans can persist in their opinion that blacks never contribute much to society. Example, when literature classes, book clubs, and book reviews fail to mention that Willa Cather, author, journalist, opera critic, was a lesbian in a long-term relationship, then gay and lesbian youth are robbed of a hero and a role model. At least as bad and regretful, perhaps even worse, heterosexual people are not informed of the fact that many homosexual people are good, honest, decent, productive members of society. We remember Liberace, musician and showman, Rock Hudson, the heartthrob of every woman in town, but who personally was oriented to love someone of his own gender. Raymond Burr, who played the most gallant, courteous, courtly gentleman lawyer on television, was a man in a long-term relationship with another man. And he had such a social conscience, such a responsible member of society, that even while knew he was dying, and his friends all knew he was dying, he continued to work on a television show because the cast and crew needed their income. That's responsibility. And he was a gay man. Today we have Ellen DeGeneres, star of a TV series, and now a talk show host. Melissa Etheridge, musician, cancer survivor, like so many of our friends, and busy raising funds for all sorts of causes. Rosie O'Donnell, talk show host, and now a businesswoman with her own cruise trips, especially for lesbian and gays and their families. We may think we don't know any lesbians or gay men or people who are transgender or transsexual, but it would be more correct to say we just don't know which of our neighbors and coworkers are of the same gender orientation. Does it matter whether or not we know? Yes. It is important for us to know so that we can protect our friends and neighbors, sometimes our family members, by supporting laws that ensure equal civil rights and protection to this minority. I would like to give you a few resources. Well, I have them right here. There's a resource called PFLAG. And you can go to it online. It's for parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays. It'll give you all sorts of resources, both for the parent who has just learned that his or her son or daughter is gay or lesbian or transsexual, transgendered. It'll give information also, links to other organizations that might be helpful. www.pflag.org. Another is the Human Rights Campaign. This is a group that is very concerned about civil laws protecting the rights for all gays and lesbians, transsexual, transgendered people. www.hrc.org. That site can lead you to another called Out in Scripture. www.outinscripture.org. The Human Rights Campaign has arranged with a number of scholars, pastors, professors, some straight, some gay, to write articles every week about the passages used in most churches. There's also from that site a link to a Jewish group for any of our neighbors who are of the Hebrew faith. A book I recommend to all is Say Hi to Joyce. It's Say Hi to Joyce, The Life and Chronicles of a Lesbian Couple by Deb Price and Joyce Murdoch. The book consists of a number of articles written by Deb Price, a number of letters that were written to her, and they would always end their letter and say hi to Joyce, because Joyce is Deb's partner. In there you'll find how Deb and Joyce responded to their Christian teachings while they were growing up and what church means to them today.